Okay, so following this excellent presentation by Núria is Paulo Jesus. Paulo, just to give a very brief word of introduction, also is a philosopher and also a social scientist. So he's trained both in philosophy and psychology. Now, if I am not mistaken, he's also doing a PhD in law, precisely on a topic close to the one he will be speaking about us today. He is also a great Kantian scholar, also very much interested in hermeneutics, on the narrative paradigm of selfhood, among other many interesting topics which Paulo explores. And so, to keep it very brief and very simple, let me just remind you that the title of his talk is "From the Right to War to the Duty of Peace: A Reappraisal of Kant's Paradigm Shift." So, Paulo, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I would like also to congratulate Gonçalo on this cycle of talks. I'm going to share a PowerPoint to, to help my communication. I hope you are now able to see.
Yes, we are.
Okay, very good. So I would defend that Kant represents a kind of a paradigm shift in the philosophy of war and peace. And in a very bold way, I would say that he somehow breaks with the tradition of the concept of just war, that is the jus ad bellum, and instead he proposes the more demanding concept of the duty and the right of peace. Well, to begin with, I would like to say that there are several possible Kantian pathways that cross and allow us to go through well, the field of war and peace. The first one could be, especially in the critique of pure reason, to identify what I call here, since you belong to a center of classical studies, a logos eirenikos or eirenopoios, that is, well, the reason that is peaceful and peacemaking. And this is a very important theme for Kant when he presents the critical project. So the work of self-critique, of reason, leads to pacification, to a kind of, again, in Greek, eireneusis, or a Friedensstiftung in the battlefield of metaphysics. And the proper mission of critical philosophy would be, therefore, the establishment of perpetual peace, a perpetual philosophical peace, we could say. And then, as you certainly remember, in both introductions of the first and second editions of the Critique of Pure Reason, Kant announces this peace and the methods to implement this peace. Then later on, in the end of the dialectic of pure reason, we have more clearly the, I would say, the explanation of this piece. And well, I may read with you maybe one of the last sentences in the second quotation, when it says that the dialectical use of reason produces illusions, and then perpetual peace is achieved through the annihilation of those transcendental illusions. A second possible Kantian pathway to circulate through war and peace would be quite different. It would be somehow an assessment of the Hobbesian legacy in Kant. That is, the equation between nature and war. So nature would be itself warlike. That's why here, again, thinking of a public of classicists, I propose the expression physis polemici, or in parallel with Eireno Poios, physis polemopoios. That is, well, history is moved by nature through its inherent or intrinsic warlike character. And then, as a kind of dialectical effect, positive effect, there's order in the whole and antagonism in the parts. And this antagonism produces order. So there's a mechanism of nature that somehow, through war, produces the conditions for peace. So I think that this Hobbesian thread can be identified in many different places in the Kantian trajectory. Of course, I would refer the most evident ones, namely in the writing on history, namely the fourth and the seventh proposition, and I quote, "Reason is peaceful and commands peace." And literally says, the human being wills concord, but nature knows better what is good for his species. It wills discord. And in the seventh proposition, we may read, through wars, nature drives them to what reason could have told them even without much sad experience, namely, to go beyond a lawless condition of savages and enter into a federation of nations. All wars are therefore only so many attempts in the aim of nature to bring about new relationships between states, and in doing so, to form new bodies, that is, new political bodies. And the final horizon is the Commonwealth, the universal Commonwealth of states, so the federation. And also in the writing on perpetual peace, we find the the same topic. And then he says that at the end, the outcomes of war are positive. That is, the outcomes of war are the exit from the state of nature, and then the generation of a lawful relationship between states. Well, regarding this natural character of war, there's a subtopic, I would say a slightly disturbing topic that has some connections with the posterior Hegelian reception of Kant. And I refer here to what I have titled The Sublime Psychology of Courage. And here it's somehow the recovery of a tradition that celebrates the virtues that belong to the military experience, namely military courage. And well, I read the two first lines of the quote after the title "Sublime Psychology of Courage." War itself needs no special motive, but seems to be engrafted onto human nature, and even to hold as something noble, to which the human being is impelled by the drive to honor without self-seeking incentives, so that military courage is judged. And then it continues, judged to be of great worth, and so on and so forth. And this this line of analysis resonates also in the critique of the faculty of judgment. It's the second passage, and here we have the direct and explicit reference to sublimity. And I quote, "Even war, if it is conducted with order and reverence for the rights of civilians, so with a kind of nobility and morality, or beauty, you could say, has something sublime about it, and at the same time makes the mentality of the people who conduct it in this way all the more sublime." So war renders sublime. This is quite surprising, a very, I would say, favorable judgment regarding the culture or the cultivation of warfare. It is almost the same affirmation that we find at the core of Hegel's Grundlinien der Rechtsphilosophie, where courage appears as the key virtue of the citizen. That is the selflessness of the citizen that is available to give fully, wholly itself to the state, to the greater good of the state. And it's absolutely in consonance, in agreement with this line of analysis. Well, I'm not going to follow these two possible pathways. I have a third one, and it's the one announced in my title. That is the paradigm shift, the passage from just war that is legal war, justified and justifiable war, to the duty of peace. Uh, and I would like to introduce these shifts by contrasting Kant with uh, with a noble tradition, that is the one represented by these four intellectual uh, heroes. Um, that is to say, Grotius, Hobbes, Pufendorf, and Vatel. Um, there's an interesting passage in which Kant qualify them as only sorry comforters. Um, well, this qualification would deserve in itself a long and detailed analysis. Um, and somehow this summarizes the essence of my argument. Um, that is to say, the paradigm that Grotius, Hobbes, Pufendorf, and Vatel builds and that predominates still today to a great extent, is the one in which there is a juridical framework that makes use ad bellum, use in bello, and use post bellum intelligible and also defendable from a juridical, ethical, and political point of view. And then the Kantian assessment is that such framework as somehow the responsibility for the continuation of war, and we could say for the resort to war as a political instrument permanently by states to solve their international conflicts. So the idea of Kant is to think, and here it's the ideal theory that dominates, to think an ideal framework, an ideal set of conditions that would make, I would say, necessarily possible a permanent peace within and without, or within and between states. So in a very blunt and bold way, the assessment attacks and the Kantian critique attacks the very concept of use ad bellum and declares it is self-contradictory. And I read the second paragraph here with you. The concept of the right of nations as that of the right to go to war, so literally use ad bellum, is strictly speaking unintelligible. That means, well, conceptually contradictory, since it is supposed to be a right to determine what is right, not by universally valid external laws limiting the freedom of each, but by unilateral maxims through force. One would have to mean by it that it is quite right if human beings so disposed destroy one another and thus find perpetual peace in the vast grave that covers all the horrors of violence along with their authors. So I think this is the essential meaning of the ironic, if not sarcastic expression, only sorry confidence. So moving forward now to elucidate the structure of the paradigm of just peace, and then the Kantian paradigm. So this would be the summary of this trajectory that is the progressive constitution of a philosophy of peace, in which the ethical, juridical, and political duty of peace is gradually formulated. In order to save time, I read here the second paragraph. A wave of rational ironism runs through Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, particularly between 1693, when concurrent writings by William Penn and Leibniz propose political, juridical measures to establish and preserve peace in Europe, and 1795, when Kant publishes the first edition of his impactful essay, Zum ewigen Frieden. And in between, of course, there's the treatise by Charles-René Castel with the same title, the project for perpetual peace in Europe. Now let's move on. So, what are the main elements of Grotius' juridical framework? In his opus magnum of 1625, De Jure Belliac Pacis, Grotius formulates an argument that is grounded in the concept of human nature as the foundation of natural law and natural rights, and then from the nature of individuals, he moves on to the nature of states and builds this very important and influential analogy between the nature of individuals and the nature of states, stating basically that they share the same essence, so to speak. That is, individuals are naturally moved by needs, just as states. And the essential need is the need for self-preservation. And then these needs allows one to do anything possible to satisfy itself. So there are no a priori limitations to the satisfaction of this need. You just evoke it. You just somehow demonstrate that this need lacks satisfaction, and then you are entitled to do whatever it takes. Well, this applies to individuals as well as to states. So somehow this is the most fundamental idea. Individuals and states must claim that the need for self-preservation is somehow under check in order to justify, without further requirement to justify uh, uh, all necessary actions that then will fulfill and satisfy this need. Well, then peace is guaranteed because this need somehow is balanced by symmetric needs, the need for sociability or cooperation. So somehow they neutralize or balance each other. And of course, this balance is achieved by rationality. So since human beings are rational, then they are able to strike the just equilibrium between the need for self-preservation and the need for sociability. And and well, this is the explanation for the pact or covenant or social contract theories that afterwards um, Hobbes will present in a more explicit way, and then he um, examines in depth the three we could call it the three chapters of just war theory. That is, jus ad bellum, jus in bello, and jus post bello. And well, the analysis is extremely tolerant. So once jus ad bellum is duly justified, then jus in bello, that is, the actions that are considered legitimate during war, while carrying out war, the actions are somehow open to free consideration and free deliberation. So I can anticipate here, contrary to Kant, that establishes a kind of frontier or thresholds between acceptable and non-acceptable actions in war. Grotius is much more tolerant. He states, it is true, in a very vague way, that force must be used moderately, but there is no operational definition of such moderation. There's room for complete, free, and arbitrary interpretation. So he lists as acceptable actions deception, we could call it misleading information or lying or spying, and murder, torture, enslavement, and so on. So there's no concept here, no moral or juridical concept that would be analogical to war crime. Well, we'll see in a minute that it's not the case in Kant. And then, as far as jus post bellum is concerned, he accords an absolute primacy to the victor of the conflict. So the victor can dictate the conditions that are considered necessary to reestablish peace after the conflict. Well, again, there's a huge difference between this freedom of the victim here and then the conditions, the ideal conditions defined by Kant, namely, and this is somehow the key aspect to it, namely what Kant calls amnesty. He says that after war, the victor cannot uh, consider itself as superior, and then amnesty is an essential element in jus post bellum. That is, in the possibility of peace and perpetual peace after war, so that the war that has just ended may be considered ideally as the last war between those states. Okay. Um, so these four personalities, these four founding fathers of international rights, um, have the fundamental same conceptual structures, namely that natural right equates with natural war, and that um, therefore uh, individuals, just as states, um, can, by their own nature, justify the need for war. So there's an analogy that they all adopt, and as a result, use gentium becomes a use gentium that is also use naturae. That is, this international law is an international, natural, and international law, so to speak. Um, and also, there is no no signal concerning the value of permanent peace. And here, even the most uh, juridically minded of the four, that is Emer de Vatel, is extremely, we would call it in the international relations terminology, is extremely realist and states that um, um, that peace is just a kind of historical stage in the relationships between states. So the negotiation of peace does not have any obligation to secure peace indefinitely or to commit itself to a long, we could call it an ideally indefinitely long horizon. It's somehow a locally and really or realistically consideration of war and peace. A striking um, component of this natural law of war is that even the duty to peace that is considered as morally compelling is I would dare say, merely a hypothetical or conditional imperative. Uh, well, in the Hobbesian scenario, uh, there's a tension between uh, the right of nature and the natural laws. So the right of nature means the liberty, the unlimited liberty um, when one is striving for self-preservation. Whereas natural laws uh, denote the rational theorems or rational dictates that are conducive to self-preservation. And therefore, if they are really conducive to self-preservation, they must command peace, because war does not guarantee, evidently, self-preservation, but the risk of self-destruction and mutual destruction. And then when exposing the transition from the state of nature to the civil state, Hobbes presents a long list of natural laws, of moral imperatives that command peace, and therefore will be the base will be the basis for the justification of the covenant or the contract that will be the only possible guarantee of peace. But then, in order to explain here what does hypothetical or conditional peace really mean, I quote Hobbes. It is a precept or general rule of reason that every man ought to endeavor peace as far as he has hope of obtaining it. And when he cannot obtain it, that he may seek and use all helps and advantages of war. So if we have no hope of obtaining peace, well, war remains a reasonable course of action. So in a sense, we must seek peace, but we have this latitude of judgment according to which we seek peace eventually, whenever necessary, also through war. Well, this is a crucial point, because this type of arguments will be completely invalidated by Kant and, well, faithful Kantians, so to speak, namely immediately in the aftermath of the Zum ewigen Frieden publication, Fichte or Schlegel will be completely against this type of conditional imperative of peace. Well, of course, there's an historical context that we should consider. That is the 80 Years' War, the 30 Years' War, and the various attempts to build peace, namely the Westphalia Peace, and afterwards Aix-la-Chapelle, Nijmegen, Ryswyk, and so on. Well, this chain of peace treaties proves that peace was always, I would repeat myself, a kind of local and contextual agreement that was very fragile and with an instability that um, that then provoked new conflicts and new attempts for negotiations. And the story continues throughout the, the 18th century, as I will evoke a little later. Well, there is then in the theories of peace, two main contenders, so to speak. That is the theory of the balance of power and the theory of a common power. That is to say that the balance of power means that power, internationally speaking, must be divided into a large set of more or less equally competitive states with similar strength, well, as opposed to a common power. And a common power somehow is the imperial paradigm. That is peace as relying upon a unifying and all encompassing commonwealth that guarantees peace inside itself. And given its volume, given its strength, then can also guarantee peace against external forces. But this opposition is presented as the main structure of the philosophy of war and peace by Stella Gervas in the recent work, The Conquest of Peace. However, I must say it's a huge simplification. It's more rigorous if we follow Bruno Archidiacono and his 5 types of peace. So Archidiacono analyzes the different types of models of peace and then proposes this classification. That is peace of hegemony, peace of balance, peace of political union, peace of international law or confederative peace, and lastly, peace of directorial or oligarchic peace. So Kant belongs to the 4th type of peace. That is a structure, a political and juridical structure, in which the sovereignty of the individual states is protected, is safeguarded, and also incorporated within a foedus pacificum, a Völkerbund. But this Völkerbund, this League of Nations, is not a super state. So it's not a Weltstaat. Although Kant oscillates between both solutions, that is the world state and the confederation of free states. And the Kantian solution emerges from the consideration of the third type or the third model of peace, that is peace of political union or federative peace. And the federative peace that is proposed by William Penn and Abbé de Saint-Pierre. And despite some skepticism, well, is positively evaluated by Rousseau, considers it utopian but rationally sound, I would say. So, in order to understand how the model of perpetual peace emerges, then we must analyze the transition between the third and the fourth model of peace and how they innovate and how they relate themselves to the just war tradition. So to begin with, this transition from the third to the fourth type of peace, I will briefly present William Penn, then Charles-René Castel, Abbé de Saint-Pierre, the Rousseau's evaluation, and then Kant. Well, this is the movement, so to speak. Okay, so William Penn. William Penn is one of the founders of Philadelphia. As you may see, is represented in the skies of Philadelphia. And in the very brief writing, but very dense and at the same time also very pragmatic, William Penn suggests that peace needs juridical institutions and political organization that makes it possible. That is why he explicitly presents a structure, so to speak, a structure of institutions, namely a general diet or states of parliament that establishes rules of justice for sovereign princes to observe one another. And this general diet is located at a level that is superior to the individual states. So in a sense, it's an international parliament that is announced here as the political solution. And then these sovereignties have also, or must also, function as a union, not as an imperial union, but as a political deliberative union, and then enjoy one strength. And this is an interesting expression, united as one strength. This means that they can, and sometimes maybe must, act as one personality, so to speak, in relation to external entities, but also in order to regulate their own disputes. There may be conflicts between individual states and the union that regulates the whole. Well, this idea of a relationship of hierarchical political decision among the states that form the union will be even more explicit and from a practical point of view, more clearly presented by Charlie-René Castel. And I move immediately to the proposition.
Paul, sorry, don't.
Yes.
I didn't want to stop you in your tracks, but if you could conclude in like the next 3 to 4 minutes, that would be great. Just so that we have a little bit time for questions. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you so much. Well, just an interesting historical context. While Abbe Saint-Pierre is writing his projects for perpetual peace in Europe, and he states in Christian Europe, well, at the same time, there's the war of succession, in which an empire looms over Europe. That is the empire that could emerge from the union of France and Spain. And, well, a coalition is formed to destroy the danger of such an empire. And then in 1713 in Utrecht, the peace is negotiated. In the same place, at the same time, the most important a book by Abbe Saint-Pierre, the 2 volumes of the Projet pour rendre la paix perpétuelle en Europe, is published. And here, in a much more detailed way, he describes the ideal functioning of a parliament of the United Christian Europe, the international parliament of Europe, so to speak, and how this parliament would be the groundwork for a political union that then would regulate relationships within itself and the relationships between the union and the external powers. So there would be a court of justice, an international court of justice, an international army, and a submission of the individual states to the power of the union. And even the possibility of a declaration of war between the union and a member state is contemplated, which is quite daring in order to guarantee, I would say, peace through war. And then what is the, so to speak, the new frontier in the Kantian project of perpetual peace? Well, there's a neglected passage that I would like to highlight here, the Voltaire moment. Well, it's a neglected and maybe negligible writing, but the intuition is extremely important. in this texte, Rescrit de l'empereur de la Chine à l'occasion du projet de paix perpétuelle, Voltaire ironizes the the project by Abbé de Saint-Pierre. And then the point is that the Abbé de Saint-Pierre's project is limited to Europe. So it's a Eurocentric project. It cannot effectively function. So the idea of Voltaire is that peace in Europe is only possible within the world system. That is a project for peace within the world system of competing powers. And then he identifies clearly that the Grand Turk, the king of Persia, the king of Mongolia or China or Japan would be crucial to guarantee peace, and that they must be part of the equation of peace. And this ironic, sarcastic writing is imagined as a letter written by the Emperor of China, offering his views on the project, and then somehow demonstrating that if there's not cosmopolitan view, then Europe for itself and by itself cannot be peaceful. So this is somehow one of the elements that in Kant is considered as ideally and logically necessary. And so now it's time to conclude, but I'm sure that you have all already often meditated the structure of the perpetual peace, namely, again, historical coincidence, the same year of the publication of Perpetual Peace, there's a chain of negotiations that lead to the peace treaties of Basel and Campo Formio, that is the Napoleonic or the pre-Napoleonic or the revolutionary wars that are the foreground for the Napoleonic later on project, and then the three main conditions for peace offer a structure in which they suppose or they entail each other. So the three definitive articles for perpetual peace, namely republicanism, federalism, and the cosmopolitanism, are supposed to be so intricately connected that republicanism, I would say, by a kind of juridical necessity, realizes or accomplishes federalism, and that federalism is only self-consistent if connected to cosmopolitanism. So I'm aware that the time is over. We could also consider the actuality, that is the contemporary reception in the landscape of the philosophy of international relations and international law. These would be some of the interlocutors to assess the legacy of Kant. So Walzer, Rawls, Habermas, Schmidt, and Ulrich Beck. Well, thank you so much for your attention, and sorry for not complying perfectly with the time that was available. Thank you so much.